Radio KAJW. All right. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in this beautiful blue world. This is Radio KAJW's first video podcast. It's a big night.
I'm happy to be here.
It's a big night.
Yeah.
Sitting next to me is Ben Goldberg. We go way back. We grew up together on the same in the same neighborhood.
So we met last week.
Playing Stratomatic baseball,
Yeah.
playing flag football, and the like.
Valley kids.
Valley Dudes.
Valley kids.
We are the original Valley Dudes.
Yeah.
We also had the incredible experience and good fortune to make a lot of music together. I'm carrying
What's in your hands,
holding
Adam?
2 albums with me.
What do you got?
Can we get the close-up there, boss? This is the first record we made. No? We can't do it, boss. There we go.
There we are.
Oh,
There you go. Yeah,
there you go.
I can hold. There you
That's
go.
O'Malley at Home.
Yeah.
And it's a compilation album. And then we also made this album that we lived a dream. We were in the studio for a year making this record together, I think. Something like that.
Yeah, it's about right.
And
Jerk Factory Studios.
out of all of the
Factory West.
all of the records that I've made in my life, that is the record that I am most proud of. It was no record company, just the band and the producer, and making music that we wanted to make, and it was an incredible experience.
It was a family record.
It was a family record,
Yeah.
and I knew it was great. It was one of the only records that I never lost perspective as far as loving it. I loved it all the time, and I knew it was going to be great. And then when we were done, it was just even better. Did we say what it was?
I don't
The
know.
Morgensterns.
Yeah.
It's the Morgensterns.
There you go.
Pin the tail
Oh my God. Oh, there we go.
on the honky.
Yeah.
And there'll be a link eventually somewhere where, can we buy it still?
I don't know.
I think you, or maybe you can't.
I don't know.
Maybe you can't buy
But I could
it.
stare at that album cover all day.
I will tell you this: we're threatening to turn it into vinyl, which I'm excited about. And that brings us. Let's get the sponsor out of the way real quick.
Adam, tell us about our sponsor.
We are being sponsored by Soundscape Media Group, and I brought some great records with me. This is their big seller, and it's the Bone Daddies, Archaeology, and it's an amazing record. It's the Bone Daddies' basically demo record to get them a record deal, but for me, it's the best thing they ever recorded. It's incredible. And then there's some other, this is a great record too. Animal Love, Glenn Ferris, Italian Quintet.
There you go. Am I corporate shill now that we're like
We are.
sponsors?
Well, we have to, we got to.
I don't know what
It's
happened to
a
me.
friend of mine's record company, and I want to help him, and he's helping me. So, and then we've got 2 others, but you can go to the Soundscape Media Group website, and that link will be at the bottom. We'll send you there. So we want to thank Soundscape. Here's 2 more of their hot discs. Amazing quality pressings, and all different kinds of music. So highly recommended.
What about Lucky
And
Strike?
they're limited.
They still
Oh, there's the
sponsoring?
camera. There you go. This one's cool. This is his. I can't remember. He's related to Irving Bush. That's the owner of the record company. Is a family member. And anyway, okay, so that's that. We got that out of the way.
Those are all of our That's it.
That's it.
That's our sponsorship.
Well, we also want to a big shout out to a podcast that is producing this episode, and it's Mike on a Platter. That link will also be at the bottom, and we can send you there. It's a great podcast. You have to go check it out for yourself. I can't even describe what it's about, but there's a huge variety. And I've actually appeared on the podcast a couple of times, 3 times actually. And they're amazing guys. And Eric
Would
is
it be a
producing
stretch
the
to
show.
say you're a regular?
No,
Okay.
I am not a regular. At one point, impossible. I hope to be on it again at some point. There you go. So Eric is our producer, and he's been so kind to put this show together. So that's it. That's all of our sponsors, and now we can get down.
Well, thanks
to
for inviting
business.
me, fellas.
Ben Goldberg. I'm so happy that he's here.
When was the last time I saw you? How long has
It's
it been?
been a long time, man.
I
I don't even remember when the last
Crazy.
time.
I know.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
We've been in contact, though,
Yes.
a lot over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And been getting through a lot of tough times together.
Yeah.
And also having a lot of fun over text. And I've wanted to do the Radio KAJW video podcast for a while, but I kind of got, uninterested because the podcast landscape is so, out of control that I had nothing to say. I didn't feel like I had anything to say until I can broadcast live music on my radio station, which you can go to, and I guess we should say that too. You can find Radio KAJW on Instagram, and there's a link on the bio that goes right to the radio station. It's in 24/7 internet radio stream, and eventually I'll be able to broadcast live on that too. But here's the thing:
I feel like I should be taking notes. It's a lot of information.
I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, but something's happened that everybody's talking about, and I still feel that there's two reasons, actually. The biggest reason to do this is for posterity. Is that the right word?
Posterity.
Posterity, not posterity, not my prostrate, but posterity for Ben and I, because the subject of the Beatles Get Back epic show on streaming on Satan's network is it's life-changing for us because we grew up. I was born the year that the Beatles hit the States, 1964.
And I was born the year this was filmed. Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So it's a huge part of our life, and there's no way that I don't get into the music business without my love for the Beatles. It's the pinnacle of rock and roll for me.
Yeah.
And so when the show came out, Ben and I were talking about it, and we believe that we have some insight from our life story that relates to the show. That's pretty enlightening to both of us. So we wanted to get it down on tape for us and for our kids and stuff, because it's that important to us. I mean, one of the notes that I've got here, it's how I wanted to start, is that I wrote, I've got a feeling I got to live this long so I was able to see Get Back. That's how important it is to me. It really... I felt that. I really felt that life over the last couple of years has been so wacky and crazy.
Yeah.
Like how can you put it all together, and what does life mean and everything? And when this show came on, I was like, oh, that's why I'm still here.
Yeah.
So I could put all of the pieces together.
It's been tough for me a bit to balance the fact that this is something so personal. It's like, this is, like you said, a lifelong journey, and you so connect to what they're trying to pursue in their story, because it's something we've been involved with, and both from a fan perspective and from, being musicians, trying to make records, trying to make great art. So something so personal, and yet, of course, everyone's talking about it. It's on Disney. So it's a weird thing to be. I know. So that's tough, because it's like, what else is there to say, right? There's that. What else is there to say?
Yeah.
But it is so personal, and I felt like we were talking about it, or texting about it, through the fog of the world's talking about it. Oh, everyone's 8 hours or whatever it is. But it really feels like something we would be watching if no one else were talking about it, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter that everybody else is talking
right,
about it.
right. Whether they were
It
or
was
weren't.
so
yeah.
important for us to get shit off our back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know, it was completing like lifelong questions about the band and my own life.
Right. Absolutely.
That was what was bizarre
Absolutely.
about it.
I know. It's kind of scary. It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
It was, I guess, one of the most important things from an emotional standpoint is, and we should get to the good stuff because the emotional part is like, it's, you know, thanks everybody for being my therapist tonight. I felt for the first 3 days, obviously when Thanksgiving happened, I watched him consecutive days.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't miss a day.
Right.
And I watched them multiple times. That's true. I'm probably on my 4th or 5th time because I watched in both episodes back to back every day. Mm. But the point, I somewhere either right at the end of day 1, going into day 2, I had this feeling that John and George were alive, and it was incredible. Yeah. It's heartbreaking, and it was joyous. It made me feel like I was 7 again or 13 again.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that pain, especially of losing John. And a lot of people I've been hearing say that recently, that there's a big difference between the way they passed, because one's a shock and was taken away, you know, too young. They both died too young. But everybody knew that George was not well.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, one thing this did do, because the quality is so pristine, the audio, the video, and so they are very much alive. And if you've been kind of deep into this, if you're, you know, as obsessively obsessed as we are, and I've been listening to a lot of these clips for years in bootleg form, and they've been in these very, you know, these audio clips and even some of these video clips that have been, you know, quality's not good, a lot of hiss and a lot of static, and that creates a very kind of mysterious, mythic quality about it. Ghost-like. And this just brought it like, oh, there's the room. It's like they're the fellas. They're the guys. It really brought them down to earth, which is what I think was so relatable.
Yeah.
You know, so they were just 4 guys. I mean, what's crazy is that these 4 guys in this film, you know, again, it's just a few years earlier that they were, you know, in the midst of Beatlemania. But these 4 guys just seem so far past that. They just seemed like 4 veterans.
Yeah, they were ahead of everybody, like Dylan.
Yeah.
That's why they all got along too.
Yeah.
They were so far ahead of the music industry, the media.
Right.
They didn't give a shit about any of that. And they were done with being famous, all of them, already.
Clearly, yeah.
You know, they didn't care.
Maybe Paul.
Except Paul.
Maybe Paul still had that drive.
And Ringo too, I guess.
Yeah, well,
he was always a showman.
Yeah. He wanted to be in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul was.
Yeah, Paul still had that kind of that drive to be relevant and stay with.
Can I say that maybe I'm a little louder than Ben? Is that possible?
Or maybe, I don't know.
No. Okay, just my own voice.
You know, you've got that voice, Adam.
All right.
I can't get, you know.
Fair enough. Producer says we're good.
Producer says we're good. Thank you, producer.
Yeah, there's this, and even Paul, right? He is into the family life now, and he's probably more relaxed. He's also, which I always said that. So this is, I guess, one of the main things that it was the light bulb going off is that I had my own, which I do. Part of being a good producer is that I feel like I've listened to music more than most people. Mm-hmm. And in the case of the Beatles and Dylan, I've read every book there is to read.
Right.
So I know so many different angles, and you put it all together and you have your own notion of what their personalities were and how, like we've all heard of how Yoko broke the band up, and I just knew that wasn't true.
Right.
I can't tell you why I knew,
Right.
other than taking all the information and discerning it myself.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we said on the drive over here that John had said many, many, many times after the breakup that the decline started, or the end started, with the death of Brian Epstein, right? Brian Epstein.
You
So,
said this,
Yeah.
which is, I forgot that he said that.
Yeah. And so the minute they didn't have someone, they called it the parent, or time to go to work.
Right.
Paul took that space, and it was a tough position for him to be in, and you can see why it annoyed everybody else. But he sensed, without someone doing that, like Ringo said, they weren't going to make any music. You know what I mean? So clearly Yoko had nothing to do with that. Yeah.
That was actually one of the first times I think I texted you right afterwards, which is one of the few things, because I didn't want to talk too much about it. I wanted us to improvise it. But one of the main things that hit me harder than ever was that it was obvious that Brian Epstein, taking himself out of the picture, for those who don't know, he committed suicide, which is, you can't have a more tragic way. This is another thing. I guess this is where we're going to get into a lot of stuff that I don't think people are really talking about. The Beatles had a lot of tragedy from the very beginning. Stu Sutcliffe, who was a driving force of the band in the beginning, because he was the coolest dude.
Well, he was important to John. He was very important to John as his
so
art school buddy. He was the cool guy.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think?
And he brought in the Astrid and Klaus, like they were right. Astrid,
yeah, but when you see pictures of them, you see like that's the cool guy.
Yeah,
and you know how we were when we were young. Even Paul's got to be thinking to himself, that freaking guy's cool.
Yeah.
And it's driving him to be cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Klaus Vormann, and Astrid.
Yeah.
These are the really cool people in the back. That was the George Harrison documentary, the Scorsese documentary.
Yeah.
That was so obvious from that how important Klaus and Astrid were to the vibe of the Beatles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that kind of indelible look, when the world first saw them, they were, she was so key in terms of their look, how they presented.
Mod.
Yeah, the mod thing, right? What was cool.
Before mod was mod.
Yeah.
And with Sutcliffe, so he's the other thing, I don't think they had a lot of confidence in the way they looked compared to him. Like, he was so good looking.
Yeah.
And they knew it was important, and that's why he was in the band. Not because
he couldn't play his instrument.
Right? He couldn't play.
Yeah.
But they knew that it was show business, and they needed him. So anyway, so he's in the band. For those that don't know, I'm going to make it quick. They're starting to play gigs, and it was a rough crowd. It's in London. It's in the 60s, early 60s, late 50s.
Yeah, late 50s.
Right,
yeah.
Right, when they're 19.
Yeah.
And the crowds are throwing shit at them. And, they're doing their best, but every night after, and, they're all dressed with pompadours, and they called them teddy boys back then. And so they look, let's say feminine a little bit, or just made up. And you've got drunk people in London, out of their minds, and bikers and stuff, right? Wasn't that was maybe, or just gangs or English gangs. Anyway, at the end of the shows, there was always a threat of them getting beaten up. And one night, Sutcliffe got his ass kicked, and it ends up killing him.
Yeah.
He gets brain damage, and he dies when he's 21. And he's like this force for them that's gone all of a sudden. And I mean, I'm sure everybody has got a story that someone left them too early in life and how tragic it is. So that's the first thing that they had to deal with and get over.
And it should be said, for John, who was the closest to Stu Sutcliffe, that, for someone who had been through that loss, right?
They both lost their mothers.
The mothers.
They lost their mothers young.
His father left the family, was not a part of his life at all. Loses his mom. His best friend, Stu Sutcliffe, from art school. he go? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just lost.
Right.
Yeah. John's famous letter. I just felt like anybody I got close to was going to die.
Right. So, and you got to feel that that's part of what's driving this incredible emotional connection they had with music.
Yeah.
That there's a reason why we're all reacting to that, because they were living that art life of taking tragedy and turning it into beautiful music, right?
Yeah. And we should say Paul shared that loss, right, with his mom.
Yeah.
So right.
That was part of how they connected.
Yeah.
Right. They both had that in common. Besides that, they both wrote songs that nobody. And at the time, no one wrote songs.
Oh yeah, you
so
write songs too. I got it.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah.
So anyway, that was the beginning, and then they meet this Brian Epstein cat, who completely raises the level of the band. Without Brian Epstein, there is no Beatles as we know it. He markets them in a different way, gets them to start thinking about music as a business and showing up on time and taking things seriously. I mean, it just completely changes their life. And he's really responsible for turning them into the stars, him and George Martin. Right, he gets them in front of George Martin, and George Martin does with them with music that Epstein does with the business part of it.
Absolutely.
And at the top of their games, they lose Brian Epstein because he commits suicide. He was. It's a complicated story. I don't know. We don't have to get into the details, but the reason is because one of the first things in Get Back is that they come to grips with it. Things are starting to not go well. And it comes up that the reason why things are not going well is because Brian's not around. You know, we've heard about this. The studio was too big. You know, they had all these excuses of why it wasn't happening. But the fact is, now that you can see it, the studio is freaking beautiful. The lighting is beautiful.
Twickenham?
Yeah. Twickenham. Yeah. Everything about it is top notch. And that's the other thing, that Beatles, everything they've ever done is always first class, top notch. They're leading this charge so far ahead of what we now consider normal rock and roll. They're creating all of this from the get-go, and it still works today exactly the way it worked in 1969.
Yeah.
Nothing really has changed. We're all just trying to be in the Beatles.
Right.
Everyone is.
Right. That's it.
Whether you want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And there's
but I think, wanting to, everyone's trying to be in the Beatles. It's everyone's trying to figure out the magic, the alchemy.
Right.
How do you create that kind of art?
Right.
That kind of art.
And no
that
one
kind
can.
of art. That consistently. I mean, that's the pursuit.
And I want to be able to say this to the camera and on this show because it's important to me. Anyone that doesn't understand the cultural significance of the band and how they changed music, I will see you in 200 years in heaven or look down upon you in hell and make you say to me, I'm sorry I was wrong. You're right.
So did you just lose half, whatever audience, Adam? You gotta.
I just can't. I've come across so many people that, like, I don't get the Beatles.
No, I know. It's hard.
And people that, that I respect their musical taste and stuff.
I know.
And it's just like.
Well, you know what? I understand this. Can I?
Yeah,
I understand.
Of course.
This.
Please.
It's weird. At least, somebody that is that popular, that here we are talking about why they're so great. It's the Beatles. So I get it. There's a strain in us that wants to be contrarian. Like, oh, come on, it's the fucking Beatles. That's not really my thing.
Right.
Too pop.
Right.
Too pop.
Right.
They're too popular.
Well, that is what the cool people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And
So really,
it's a lazy way out.
Right.
Yeah.
How funny is it that you think you're cool?
Right.
By saying the greatest thing that's ever happened in rock and roll.
Yeah.
Is just
not
okay.
My
it's
thing.
not my thing.
Yeah. Too pop.
No, it's not. It's not true. It is your thing.
Right.
But you're just not in touch with your own self and the way the world should work.
But that's just our opinion, though.
No. See,
this
is Radio KAJW, and there's no such thing. There's I'm right, and when you don't agree with me,
But
you're wrong.
it is funny though. It's like
Yeah, man.
that whole the Beatles were never my whatever. I mean, I'm a Stones person.
You know that
No.
I almost
love
don't
the
have a problem with that.
I love the Stones, but what do
Like,
you mean I'm not? The Beatles
yeah.
That's you don't have to have.
So
yeah.
did you ever talk to Mick Jagger about what he thinks about the Beatles?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
He inducted them into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. He knows he's not as good as the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Richards knows he's not as good as the Beatles. That you know why they know that?
Yeah.
They had to stay together because it was the only thing they could
Right.
do that the
That was what
Beatles
they
couldn't do.
Exactly, it's true. The thing is, the Beatles wrote songs that other people couldn't write. That's just
No
right.
doubt.
And they could sing the way other people couldn't sing.
No doubt.
I mean, they say,
I want to give a shout out
Yeah.
to Brian Jones because he's also underlooked in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think he pushed the Beatles too. Everybody was looking at Brian.
You mean because he could play? He'll pick up anything and kind of
and
make
just
music out of it.
his look also and
Yeah.
his vibe, his eclecticism.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Stones were right there with them in the beginning. And even like, what's that?
I thought it was
even Brian Jones, when the Stones were happening, everybody was acknowledging that he's like a leader rock star, right, at the time.
And the thing with him is that he could pick up anything, and make music out of it.
Right.
That was kind of it, right.
Right.
And there's a Beatles quality
for sure
to that, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to I think that's some incredible similarity how they lost Brian Jones too.
He played sax on My Name, Look Up the Number. That's Brian Jones playing saxophone. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Brian Jones is playing saxophone on My Name, Look Up the Number. That's a Beatles song, not on any record. But yeah.
He so anyway, it wasn't that it's like, to me, that's where when Brian Jones takes himself out of the Stones mix, they lose the same footing, But again, it's almost a totally different band. But the fact when you go back and you start to watch a lot of this film, you see all of them say at some point they want to be in the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
Everybody.
Oh yeah.
Clapton too.
Well,
he was.
Yeah. And he said it was really intimidating. Although
Yeah.
Clapton, was a little self-sabotaging. Because
For sure.
and if he had too much pop success, he'd kind of run. But
For sure.
in the movie, George Harrison clearly is struggling, right? He's clearly struggling. You get it, and you get it.
Yeah.
And for the rest of his life, whenever the Beatles were brought up, he was a little bitter. He was a little frustrated. He never lost that. It always kind of upset me. Like, come on, dude. I get it, but you were in a band with John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
But he never really lost that,
I think he did, though. I'll tell you when he did.
Okay, go. Tell me.
He was in the second greatest band of all time. And I think when he did that project, it was his come full circle, where I did something that the two of them didn't do. I was in the Traveling Wilburys.
When he was in the Wilburys.
I think.
Well, I think he was really comfortable, and I don't think it made him look back on the Beatles with any more fondness. He seemed to just always carry with him a little sense of.
I don't know. Also on Anthology, I think he got rid of it.
That
on
was
that
nice.
too.
That was nice because they were together.
Yeah. Plus, and he's I don't know. I guess I disagree with you.
All right.
He made so many great movies. He's a movie executive.
Yeah, the Monty Python
And I think at that
guys.
point, he's like, I'm happy that I was in the Beatles.
I think he was happy. I just think that there's an edge that never.
You don't
left
think
him.
he really?
You know what I think it is? Forget the Beatles. Maybe that's not. It's those two.
Yeah, but
It's
you don't
John
think
and Paul.
he was like finally, at some point he was like, I just wasn't as good as them.
Well, that's what I want him to do.
I think he did.
I want him, and I felt like he never.
Well, I don't think he no, look, wait. He can't do that because it's show business. You can't do that.
Yeah. I just feel like that would have been.
He's still trying to sell records and stuff. You can't say.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
He
know.
doesn't need to be that humble. I don't know. I think I love. A lot of people are talking about that moment where where he says it first, you can just get Clapton to play.
Yeah. But John says that.
No. I think George says it first.
John says if he doesn't come back by Tuesday, we'll just call Clapton.
He doesn't. Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay. George says it when they're at Apple Studios. Right. After he comes back, there's another moment where George says it. He's like, I'm having trouble finding it. He's like, we can call Clapton.
Okay.
You know?
Which he, of course, had already done before.
Yeah.
During the White Album, which was their last album. I mean, we're watching them make.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
Let It Be.
that's one of my notes.
Yeah. Oh, good
which
one note.
Rick Beato talked about this extensively. His podcast is great. But he did I think a side cast about the time span from Rubber Soul till the end of the Beatles.
It's head spinning.
It's
head spinning. Their entire career, just
so then
time compressed.
Right.
Yeah.
And which the connection with Let It Be, making Let It Be, is they did that whole thing in 22 days.
Oh, I know.
In 22 days.
Yeah. And that same
insane.
year, after what you just watched, they just went on and threw off the album Abbey Road, which, George Martin got to really produce again, like as a professionally produced record. And that,
Another, why do I just, like, why did this dawn on me too? When watching Let It Be and hearing Paul say, we were supposed to do a live TV show after the last record, the White Album, but we all just got, tired of it, or not.
We got shy. Remember, he's like, we've gotten a little shy.
That was part of it, but it dawned on me where this is where the producing chops that I have, and I knew this way back when, that it sounded like demos. The difference between the White Album and everything else, and why everybody reacted to it, is because it was the first time a polished rock and roll act basically put out demos. And now you look back on it, it's like what we were talking about the Abbey Road album cover too. With so much perspective now, you can look at the White Album and go, they knew they were putting out demos. They weren't done. They got tired of it. The album cover is white. There's no art. It's a stamp with a number on it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, next. I mean, it's their demos.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is that some of the most famous Beatle demos are the White Album demos. The Escher.
Right.
Those Escher
Right.
acoustic. They were at George's house, and they came back from India. Epstein had just died.
Right.
And they came back and they were breaking all the rules in India and writing songs, which they weren't supposed to do, which was hilarious to me. And Paul talks about that in Let It Be. He's like, I was watching, I got all the footage. It's like, that's not even us. We're school children, what are we doing? Anyway, so they come back with all these songs.
That is a great scene where he's telling Lennon how it doesn't look like him.
Yeah.
And Lennon admits it, and he does an impersonation of himself in that scene.
As a school kid.
It's so good. And bowing to the Maharishi.
Yeah, he's going up in the helicopter with him, like he's going to give you the
That's too much, man.
But so they come back and they record those great Escher demos, which have been out there forever. Yeah. And they were finally included on the deluxe, was it 2019?
Yeah.
They did all right.
Yeah.
So, Giles Martin did his new mixes, and they...
Well, the difference is... Sorry,
but
go ahead.
I was just going to say that if you listen to the White Album, right? The White Album we all know.
Yeah.
What they recorded in the Escher demos, they didn't change much.
No.
It was amazing. I mean, just acoustic to full band, but it really...
Yeah, I mean, the difference to me is that Escher demos all sound like one take.
Right.
Like it's just, here's the idea, throw it down.
Yeah.
And then they're sussing it out a little bit for the White Album recordings and realize that the rawness of that one take thing, right? They're sort of, and now with Let It Be also, you can kind of put it all together and you can tell they just did Sgt. Pepper's. They grew to Sgt. Pepper's, right, from Rubber Soul and Revolver.
Yeah.
And did like the masterpiece producing for Sgt. Pepper's, and then the Magical Mystery Tour is kind of like, okay, let's do this again. Yeah. But we're still good at it.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's okay, no more producing.
Yeah. Well, we're
not going to produce.
Right. Enough with that.
And Brian checks out.
Yeah. So and then they just throw off a single called Hey Jude.
Right.
And they're like, that was pretty cool. Let's go. Yeah. It is the rough hatred. You know, revolution, hatred.
And it's all in 4 years, less than 4 years.
It's insane. Well, I mean, think about, you know,
It's 67 to 69.
They're gathering in this film at the beginning of, it's New Year's. It's
Right.
of 69. You know, you go back, right, to Rubber Soul. You know, you're talking a few years. It's 4 years. You know, it's
Unreal.
crazy.
All right, I want to get into a little bit of
Go to the notes, Adam.
some of the highlights of what I picked out. We talked about that.
I'll be your Ebert to your sister.
We're going to address this quick because everybody's talked about this, but I love the fact that Yoko is the Yoko breaking up the band is over.
It's over.
We're done with that conversation.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to add to it, which I haven't heard anybody say yet, if anything, on the Let It Be sessions with her sitting there and Linda being there, their feminine energy is taking on the music business. Because the problem with Twickenham, to me, is there's too many music business people running around.
Yeah. It's also a working film studio, and they're getting
Yeah.
ready for the Peter Sellers movie. It was
Yeah.
a weird, too many, yeah.
So at least the feminine energy with them in there, it's like a pill, like a truth serum, to me, that kind of disrupts the whole thing, and that's where you get George being more sensitive to what's going on, and getting like, this is ridiculous, this is stupid.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to make the point is, I feel watching it that they helped things stay together even a little longer.
Right.
If they weren't there, they probably would have broken up even quicker.
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard someone make a similar point. Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
I mean, they're getting along, Linda and Yoko.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when Maureen shows
pops
up,
in, she's a spirited.
Everybody's, you know, you don't feel any weird energy from the women at all.
Right. It's a big
They're all
family.
happy.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to just say that to me, I think it's interesting, again, forward thinking about where we are today in the world and all of equality, where they were ahead of it. You know, they were ahead of the curve. They knew that was a good thing to have the women around.
Yeah, and they knew if they were, you know, I do think watching this movie, that as we're watching, remember this is January of '69, and of course, the Let It Be album and the movie that we've all associated with that record, that all was, you know, 1970. It was a long time late, you know, relatively a long time later. So they were in a very different space, right? They were already dealing with the breakup and the Alan Klein and Linda's father, all that stuff.
Don't get me started.
I don't know. So at this moment, I know, right? And this is where you see it start.
Yeah.
But when this movie's, what we're watching, they're not. I mean, they talk about divorcing and breaking up, but they're expecting to make more records
For sure.
So the fact that their families are growing, or like, that's just part of them.
How about to add to this part of the discussion? Do you remember it's in episode 3, part 3, and I forgot what they're talking about, but Paul's talking to John, and George says something, and Paul says, I'm not talking to you, George. George Martin.
Oh, yeah.
He says, I'm not talking to you, George.
Yeah.
That's why I'm talking to John.
Yep.
And it's just like a business meeting part of the conversation where you can see him stiff-arming the business.
Yes.
Because obviously he loves George Martin. He has all the respect for him.
Yeah.
But and then that's one of those moments where you're going, there's no way they didn't love each other.
Yeah.
He's leaning on him right there.
Yeah.
And he's pushing George Martin away.
Right. Well, this is within the inner circle.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
That was so huge to me. That moment is so cool.
Yeah. So speaking of Paul, I want to throw one thing out there, which I struggled with, because there are times, again, connecting with this entire, you know, personally having been in bands and wanting to, you know, the whole pursuit of the greatest record, you know, making good art, whatever that secret sauce is, you know. And watching the guys work with Paul McCartney at that moment and where he was at that moment. And obviously you can feel Paul is sensitive enough to know he's got to kind of push these guys forward to get stuff done. And he can feel John pulling away a bit, you know,
And George.
and George clearly. So it puts Paul in this spot where he's going to put the band on his back.
Right.
Because he thinks he knows best.
Right.
He knows best.
Without, may I say, ego. They were all, I think that's another, so, to me anyway, because it's talk about all the bands that you've been in or around, you know, how ego can ruin a project.
Yeah.
You know, and I always remember hearing Quincy Jones and it like becoming a mantra for me is, you know, check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Even though he's full of shit because he's one of the most egotistical people on the planet. But anyway, and I, you know, also one of the greatest producers on the planet. So,
Right, but with
it's true though.
So with Paul in that, he really believes he's got to, you know, he even says, you know,
I don't like
being the boss.
Right.
You know, he says to John,
you're the boss. Right.
You've always been the boss.
Right.
You know, yeah, and I'm not comfortable. So
John doesn't want to do it anymore.
well, John, no, he doesn't.
Nobody does.
And so Paul's doing it though.
Yeah.
And so the question,
why is he doing it? Because he wants the band to stay together.
he does. No
That's
one more
all
than Paul.
it is.
No one more than Paul. Clearly. And that long, you know, that moment when
That's all it is.
It's dawning on him that he's losing this.
Yeah. Oh my God,
I
dude.
know.
That's one of the most heartbreaking. It's long too.
And it's
that shot
is long, and he's tearing up.
Yeah.
Man. And
he's staring into space at Twickenham at the end, right before they're gonna change or they're gonna meet. You know, try and talk George back into it.
Yeah.
And there's just
and then
he's
there were
just
two
staring into space.
And then there were two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there were two.
Because for him, I mean, it's this is his job. This is his band. It's also his friends.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. So I guess artistically, I see Paul. I see Paul doing what he thinks he needs to do, and it's overbearing.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, it's over. If you're George and you're John, you're like, you know. So the question is, would they, if Paul steps back a little bit, do those guys fill that void in? Was Paul just too stressed out? You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, giving them
sure.
a little room, they would have met the
Because
moment.
they do when they're at Apple. They do.
Yes, they do.
John especially.
And you notice,
and so does George.
The one time in the entire film that Jackson edited together, that Paul is the one who steps away. He had an appointment. Remember that one day? He's like, I got an appointment at 1 o'clock. He doesn't say what it is. He has to leave. And at that moment, John, George, and Ringo are there. Maybe Preston are. And they make music the entire time.
Yeah.
They're not just sitting around doing nothing.
I think just to put a little bow on the ego thing, because it's such a huge part of making music and being in bands. They have the whether the Maharishi didn't end well.
Yeah.
The experience of them wanting to go there is for sure trying to get in control of their ego, right? And fame, and deal with fame.
Sure.
I mean, that is why they did that. They knew they were on, you know, this fame thing is going to be fleeting. They knew it. And they wanted to work on themselves. So they had that. It's like a major almost psychology course that they went, meditating and all of that. So they bring that back into the band, and it worked. I thought it worked because I thought they all were, even George, like, and he, you know, the first time I watched it, I think I said to you, or you said it to me, I forget that, you know, George just wants to, you said it to me, George just wants to be with the band and Dylan. You know, he's done with this thing. The other thing, I don't think it happens in the movie, but I've heard people talk about it, which I know to be true, that when he went to New York, right, to hang out at Woodstock right before that, and they're working on the Basement tapes, they loved, you know, that was like a Beatle coming, and they loved him.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like a god to them, all of them.
Yeah.
So he felt it, and he felt the same way about them.
Yeah. He was so happy. Yeah.
Yeah. So he brings that back into the studio going, look, I don't need you guys. Because there are people that you respect as much as anyone that think I'm the shit.
Right.
you know.
And that felt really good, and this isn't feeling really good right now.
Right,
Yeah, exactly.
But I also, I should say, and also, it's cool that he see, that's where I think he still thinks he knows that they're making great music, better music than everybody else. George.
Yeah.
I think he knows it.
I think he knows that too. I
think
just wish
you got
yeah.
even however is good. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying,
It's
but
like
but you gotta think that he's standing next to these two guys and he hears them sing some of the freaking 3-part harmonies, man.
Oh yeah,
when they're just coming up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did Phil Spector have to ruin the record? The 3-part harmonies sound like a choir.
Yeah, and they could always do that.
They
could always, right? I mean, all their
so
hours,
beautiful.
all their hours in Hamburg and the club, like they developed skills with 3-part harmony, you know, that were
in that quiet, deadened room.
Yeah.
Those harmonies, they could feel how beautiful it was. That's the other thing. You just can't make beautiful music like that unless you're a beautiful person. You can't.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, man.
Oh,
that was
my
sweet.
God.
Oh, that was, yeah.
They're just the best.
They're just the best. Welcome
They're
to
just
our
the best.
analysis. They're just the best. Have a wonderful day.
Oh, man.
Did I keep interrupting your notes?
No,
I feel like I interrupted your notes
I just
seven times.
I wanted to talk about the ego because
if I interrupted his notes
note
7 times,
no, the ego is I think important. I think that's you know, something that you, me, Jamie felt a lot, where because we when we were making these records, we really did have that respect. We knew how important the brotherly respect was, and we never talked about ego being part of it, but we knew it was there. And you could tell when someone was just being hard-headed. Mm-hmm. You know, the one thing that we didn't have, which we just, whatever, I guess we weren't hip enough or smart enough to do, which the Beatles had, which is a really interesting thing. There were 4 votes, and they all had to agree.
Yep.
If one of them didn't, and that's usually not a majority, right?
Right.
Usually it's 3 guys is good enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And with them, that wasn't. And it shows you that it takes it to the highest excellence level, you know? And for us, we never made it a pact that the 3 of us should agree. It was just 2 guys needed to.
I guess that's true.
And they could always talk the 3rd guy into either, look, if you don't come our way, we got to move on. Yeah. So you lose.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have never done that.
I hear you. You know what? And they really stuck to that. I mean, without question. And when Ringo said, I don't want to go abroad, it was like, you don't understand. Yeah. We're not going because Ringo doesn't want to go.
Yeah, because of the food.
The
Who
food.
said, did somebody say something about, you know, or maybe I saw it on a podcast that was great. I apologize if I'm stealing the line or if it was from the movie, but maybe you'll remember. It's like they couldn't make Ringo egg and chips if they were in Greece. They couldn't hire a chef.
Right.
They just make him egg and chips. It's not like he had this fancy taste. Yeah. I thought that was great.
Well, that's why Ringo had to leave India early.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make him what he wanted.
He didn't like the food.
He didn't like the food.
It's like my dad.
Yeah. But think about the songs you see in this movie that didn't end up on the Let It Be record, that ended up perhaps on a solo record,
or Abbey Road,
right? So
dude,
both.
when he's writing something,
I know,
and he gets to that line. I mean, everybody's saying this. Yeah. It's like you want to scream out. Yeah. It's another.
I know it.
You dummy.
Yeah,
you can't figure that line out.
I love the segment, and I've heard this before on bootlegs, but Give Me Some Truth, and clearly Paul had a hand in writing that. I mean, it's like they kept saying my bit and your bit, like my bit starts in yours starts, but it's of course it's known as it's ended up on a John Lennon record, and it's a John Lennon song, and Paul himself said you didn't even remember. Yeah, that's amazing to me because it's a great song, and it was almost a Beatles song.
And the interesting thing, well, I think that's on Octopus's Garden too. George is obviously helping him write the song.
Yeah, I know, but
he doesn't take any credit.
No. But you know what I
It's
mean,
like it's
though.
a nice thing.
Yeah, I'm
Like
helping Ringo out. I can show you.
He
Yeah.
freaking wrote the song.
I know, but I'm like, give me some truth.
Yeah.
It's a you know, a kind of a
Yeah,
John Lennon
yeah. Classic.
and you know, clearly
Yeah.
they each had a bit for that. That's
But there was
amazing to me.
there was a lot of that going on
Yeah.
during the movie that I thought was fascinating. You know, that
Yeah.
they by that time they had all, even George knew that, okay, he's been having trouble getting his songs on the record.
Yeah.
But he knows he's good. He's got him in his back pocket,
Right.
and he doesn't care anymore. I have that scene where he goes, you know, I could give him to other people to sing, but
I'm
I just
done
was
with-
like,
I'm done with that.
I want to do
Do
my own thing.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so
It
good.
is interesting to me, the George songs they decided to include and the George songs they didn't include. Because they got a chance to kind of play, you know, they played some others. They ended up with, you know, For You
They
Blue.
pick
and-
all the right Beatles songs.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, songs that became classics, right?
Yeah,
so,
but
Isn't It a Pity and All Things Must Pass.
But you know what, though?
They weren't Beatles.
They weren't Beatles songs.
But-
they're classics because George's legend became this other thing. He became the cool Beatle.
They were
the
supposed to be on
coolest
another
Beatle.
record. They were supposed to be
Yeah.
on his record.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, can I say something?
Yeah.
Well, confession. I felt a little, there was something satisfying when Paul was working on Long and Winding Road, and he said, I have no ideas for this.
Oh my God.
He's like, he said, when I was writing it, it was sort of a Ray Charles thing, but now I have no idea what to do. I have he goes, I have nothing. And he sits there and he says that.
He's holding his
hair. He's like, I've got it. And George Martin, the George Martin says something like, it's not really a Beatles thing.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason that was satisfying to me, I know this is, and it's a beautiful piece of composition, but there's something about that song that
But I'll tell you.
it just was it's a very
But
personal
I'll
thing.
tell you
Like,
why
I
it's on
agree.
I'll tell you why it's on the record.
Okay.
Go watch that scene again
Yeah.
and look at John Lennon's face. He thinks it's one of the greatest songs he's ever
Yeah,
heard.
it's a beautiful song. Yeah, only Paul McCartney could write
He's
it.
got a freaking tear in his eye.
Yeah.
And he's like, the Mal Evans book, the novel. All of a sudden, I can't remember what the name of it is. Anyway, there's this fictional tale of Mal Evans' alternate life. It's a really fun read, and one of the things in the book is Lennon later in. It's basically what if the Beatles stay together is what the book is.
Okay.
So later in their career, there's a section where he's just talking about, it's kind of like what Dylan says in that interview that we listened to tonight, how he's just envious of how this guy can write such beautiful melodies.
Yeah.
You know, he knows he can't do it. And that's why I was saying, like, this book was written in 2017 before, obviously, Get Back was out. And this writer knows so much about the Beatles, he kind of foretold that happening without seeing it, because you see it in that scene. You see there, and it's many times where Lennon is just looking at McCartney like he's freaking in awe of him.
Yeah. Well, Ringo says it explicitly.
Yeah.
When Ringo says, they were just joking about it. They have, no, in terms of the whole project, he's like, we could just show him playing piano for an hour. The guy
Isn't he good?
Isn't he good? I can watch him. I mean, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
How about let's talk about Paul being so good for a while.
You know what? Paul's really good.
So what about the
Damn.
scene in Apple Studios
I think,
where he picks up George's telly and he's playing it upside down?
You mean on Old Brown Shoe?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. George is on the piano.
And he picks up George's
and he just
telly
starts slamming.
upside down.
Upside down. Yeah, on Old Brown Shoe. Yeah.
But he can play. Does he always play the left when he's playing left-handed? Is it always upside down, or does he play both? Right?
No. Yeah. Normally he'll have a left-handed.
That's crazy.
I know.
He could play the guitar
Both
whether the strings are tuned for a righty, and he flips it around.
Yeah.
And he did that just because when they were younger, he was left-handed, right?
Yeah, he had to kind of step in.
And he had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
But he can do it both ways.
Well, he's really talented.
I mean, that's
strangely
You know what
talented.
that is, man? That's who's the greatest switch hitter ever? I don't know. You know, who is? I now all of a sudden I can't remember.
I know. My brain was like, oh.
Is it Mickey Mantle? Was he a switch hitter? No. Was he? I don't remember.
This is that.
Oh my God!
I feel I'm embarrassed.
It's not Ted Williams. Stan Musial. Is he a switch hitter? I'm having trouble.
I don't think so.
I'm having trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or
whoever the greatest switch hitter is, oh, it's terrible.
I know that is terrible. I know. We apologize to all. Yeah.
We're big baseball fans.
We are.
Anyway, that just blew me away, and I didn't catch that. It took me, I think, a bunch of times to watch that to really understand what he was freaking doing.
And he was like rocking out too. He was rocking out.
Like playing leads on it too.
Yeah, and we should say Billy Preston was on bass.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I want to shout out to the Old Brown Shoe, which is just a little gem in that whole thing. Another George song that didn't make it onto the record.
Yeah. Well, that one could have been.
It was a B-side.
Yeah, it was on Past Masters, right? It's not on.
It was on Past Masters. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
God, I keep doing. I try to put a beer down. Adam,
it's okay.
And I do this every so. Yeah.
Anyway. It's okay.
All right.
How long are we at, man? We don't want to. 55. Oh my God! I told you this is going to happen. So we can do. This is only our first hour of 8.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it just as long as the show was. Yeah. I think it's actually almost 9 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was fun, but that's just part 1, if you don't mind.
There's a lot to get into.
I mean, I haven't even gotten past.
I was going to say, did you ever look at?
Yeah,
I prevented you from getting to your notes.
We got a
full
third
responsibility.
We got a third of my notes.
Oh, we did. Oh,
maybe. I don't know. I don't even think a third.
No, it was. Yeah.
Eric, producer Eric, thank you so much for inviting us here and helping us put on this fun show.
Thanks for inviting me.
We're gonna get to watch this and know what we did wrong. That's part of the fun about getting to podcast is you get better. And we're gonna talk about other stuff other than the Beatles too, because this is just too much fun, man.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We have so many musical tidbitties that we didn't even talk about personal. You and I have got a lot of good personal music biz stories that are fun. They're fun. I will say this. We'll wrap it up. I'm uncredited singing, but I have sung on a Ringo Starr record.
Oh yes,
I sang backups on a Ringo Starr.
That's right,
record.
And I played his drum kit.
I like saying this too. To my left, we were on a riser. We were singing chorus vocals. To my left was Timothy B. Schmidt. Mm-hmm. And behind me was Jeff Lynne. And Jeff Lynne kept pinching Timothy B. Schmidt's ass. And he kept thinking that it was me.
Oh, that's good.
Timothy and I we were buddies before that session. I went to a few Dodger games together with him, actually.
Really?
Which was unbelievable. Yeah.
So you went to the few Dodger games with the Eagles' second bass player.
Yeah. He's the sweetest man.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law plays drums with him.
Okay. There you go.
But that was after he and I hung out. We hung out through Scott.
Look at you name dropping.
I know I am.
Yeah, Adam's name
I got to name drop Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
I got to. Come on, man.
I know. And I did get to play.
And I am credited with photography on a Ringo Starr record.
I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, my 3 credits that make me complete as a human being are photography credit on a Ringo Starr record and then 2 credits on Bob Dylan books.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
It's good enough.
I'm name dropping.
Like
you got to do on these podcasts.
Yeah, it's your thing.
You got to say, somebody.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, okay. This went way too fast, but we're gonna call it quits for now, and we'll be back with part 2 soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I knew that was going to go by in a freaking flash. Ooh.